Hi, I'm Daniel Bertles.
And I'm Jamie Birtles.
Second time that's ever been said on one of these videos. So, we're here to talk to you about long distance relationships because guess what? We navigated that. It wasn't easy, and we want to help you all to be able to learn some things about some of our struggles and hopefully do it well. So, some of the things we want to talk about is that you have to be creative. Um, there are some difficulties that could easily lead to breakup that don't have to. And it takes patience and strength. It really does. It can be financially taxing, and communication is a real big issue. Um, So yeah, then we're gonna go into those topics. And the first one is to talk a little bit about the creativity aspect. One of the things that's important is when you are, well, all of our communication has differences, tools, methods, and frequency. Um, and so, and I'm going a little off our outline, so this is kind of maybe going to freak Jamie out a little bit, but it just seemed to fit. So I didn't need to communicate quite as often, and Jamie wanted to communicate more often. I was very comfortable with text, but Jamie wanted more video, phone call, things like that. And it's understandable, and they're different, but I'm an introvert. Well, Jamie says she's an introvert. So, but those things come into play. And so you have to realize, wow, this person's talking to me an awful lot. I don't like to talk that often. You have to address that. You have to go there and say, you know what? Even though I may not like talking on the phone, I have to talk on the phone. Even though I may not like a video chat because, ooh, who wants to be on camera? Guess what? We're on camera. Get over it. So you're going to have to do those things that stretch you. You're going to have to invest in the relationship. And that's simple. Stretch yourself, make commitments, try to understand that the other person is different and their communication styles are different. So make decisions and agree on things together. You have anything to add to that aspect?
No.
Well, that was quick. Um, now that I'm off my outline, I don't know where to go next.
I know. That's why I'm like, what are we
So,
doing?
so going back to a little bit to the outline, is some of the things to cover is, so we talked about how we communicate, but let's talk about some visits and being creative during those visits. So I made the first trip. I paid for the first trip. And one of the things that was very important to me is that here's this guy that Jamie's family had no idea who he was. He could have been a real creeper, a stalker, which I am. And you'll have to look at a previous video on that. Um, it was important to me that I went to Jamie's world first because she had family and they needed to know that I'm okay, that they need to know who I am if she were to come visit me and know that she was going to be safe. So it was imperative for me to make a relationship, build even the beginnings. It's going to take a bit, but even the beginnings of a relationship with her kids so that they could get a sense of who I am.
Well, and something else to add to that is I remember us talking about it was important for you to come see me because of my past history
Mm.
of other men and mistrust and things like that.
Yes, yes,
So
yes, yes.
it was important for me to have you come to Houston and invest in me,
Yes.
and for my kids to see that you were investing in me
Mm-hmm.
before I came to see you.
So basically, I had to do things differently than what was done before, and show that I am different than who tried to have a relationship with Jamie before.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember one evening at Jamie's house, her youngest daughter was there, and I told her youngest daughter, you know what? Do you have any questions you want to ask me? Because I want to be an open book. And I want to be transparent, and I want you to know who I am and know that this is important. And she was fine, no, no, no. And then then all of a sudden she goes, yes, I have a question. And so we talked, and it was great. And we had a good dialogue. It was the beginning of a relationship with her kids. And so keep that in mind when you're visiting. You're not in a relationship with just that person. You're in a relationship with each other's family.
Right.
And as the man, as the leader, as the one who's going to be paving much of the way, you're going to have to be involved financially, and you're going to have to lead in terms of comfort of the family, moms, dads, kids, whatever that's, pets, who knows. You're going to have to make that step to bridge some gaps first. It's in my opinion, and I'm very frankly, it's your responsibility to make the first move, to go visit first, and to invest first. And we'll get into some safety issues along with that as well. So, yeah. It's important to know the other person's world, to go see it. That's going to help. As a man, it's going to help you see, how this person lives their life, and it will give you a sense of who they are. So, yes.
And for me, it was important to see Daniel's world because I knew I was going to be a part of it one day, because we had already decided that he wasn't moving. I was going to be moving. So it was important for me to, after you only came like three times to Houston. Yeah. The majority of the visits I came here because this was going to be my new world. This is where my kids, my youngest was going to be. This is where I was going to be. I wanted to check out the town, the schools, all of that. So that was really important that I came here.
And it was beautiful because she also came to my fellowship. Mm-hmm. And it's a family fellowship. It's not an organization per se. And so I got to bring her into my world, and we got to see she got to see how I worship and how I fellowship, and that was good. My friends in this family fellowship got to meet Jamie and see, they would have clearly shared some information if they got some red flags or what have you. So it was a good opportunity for her to come see me. But again, the man makes the first move. The man makes the first sacrifices. And the man takes responsibility because everybody may end up in different places. You may end up living where she lives, you may end up living where he lives, or you may end up living somewhere else. But I really do think when you honor her family, and that they get a sense of that you're safe and you're good, and this is a good thing. You're not going to win them over immediately, but you can tear down some walls and help some transparency.
Yeah, and as far as our personal walk and how we navigated through that, like Daniel said, he came to Houston first, and he came to see me and my family and meet us first, and he paid for that ticket, and then he also paid for my first visit here to Indiana. He offered, and of course I accepted, but after that it became both of us. We were both investing in each other, mm-hmm. and I told him, I don't think it's fair for you to buy all the plane tickets, so mm-hmm. I was buying them as well, and that just shows that I'm investing in the relationship just as much as he is, and so that's important.
And that was not imperative for me, but it really showed me that she valued me and that she valued the relationship. And that kind of goes into the next topic, is you really, in a long-term relationship, you have to make a commitment to trying and getting to know each other before you make an actual relationship commitment.
Right.
So when I visited Jamie, we weren't engaged, we weren't betrothed, but we were committed to the communication. We were committed to the communication, and we were committed to stay this path until we found out otherwise. So as you face trials and struggles, and you will realize that you make a commitment to keep pushing the limits so you can see where you'll end up. Because there were several times where if we didn't have that commitment, I may have done something that triggered Jamie. It's like freaked her out. It's like she could have walked away. And same thing for me. And I could have walked away, but we felt the Lord was leading in this way. And so we committed to trying until we were able to make that real, actual commitment.
And that's just what I was going to say, is that if we didn't have that commitment to each other in the beginning,
bye-bye.
Yeah. And the thing is that because it's so hard, because you said, it's not for the faint of heart. It's so true, because it's difficult. And if you don't have the wherewithal to commit before you commit, there's no reason. Like, there has to be some level of trust and commitment to even see if you're compatible.
Right. And it's easy to bail.
Absolutely.
But it's not easy to press on and say, I want to drill down and see who this person is. I want to drill into the relationship and say, yes, I've reached gold, or I've reached something else. So, yeah, it's important that you say, you know what, this is hard, and we're going to go into the next topic of communication in a minute. And there are going to be some issues there. And it's going to be hard. And you're going to sit there and say, oh, what's your easy out? Bail. But you never get to know the person. Yeah. You might be bailing on the right person if you just get through the specific hurdles.
Yeah, I mean, I can't tell you how many times that I wanted to bail, that I decided that was like, I'm done. Because I was triggered, or because he was triggered, and I was like, I'm done. I don't want to do this anymore. And thankfully, I have friends that were very encouraged and that helped me to stick it out. But it's a struggle. Mm-hmm. It just takes a lot.
Yeah.
And you have to be willing to put forth that effort.
Yep. So this next topic we're going to talk about is actual communication, and I've alluded to it before. How you communicate, when you communicate. One of you may want to communicate more than the other wants, and so that can be imposing. It's like, why are they calling me on the phone all the time? Or why, you have to realize that we have different communication styles, and men are generally more curt and short and informational, and women are generally more relational. So we have to understand that our communication styles are different, so that, wow, that was a quick phone call and might have hurt Jamie's feelings. And I was like, wow, that was a long phone call. I just communicated all the facts I needed. Why do we have to hang around longer?
Honestly, though, I don't really think that happened.
No, it didn't.
Because we planned our phone calls, and I was about an hour, 45 minutes to an hour out from my house where I worked in the city. So after I get off work, I would call him, and we would generally talk anywhere from 1 to 3 hours. And so, because we had scheduled it, so it was good, and we were able to talk a lot and really get to know each other and really dig deep in those subjects. So I think that was good.
But during the day, I would send texts, and Jamie would send voice clips. So I was very comfortable with the text. But that leads us to another topic. We, through some of our communication, hit some touchy subjects, some things that were close to triggering. And we triggered each other on certain scenarios with text. And text is not the best way to do that. So we all have all these hurt feelings because he must have said that, or he must have meant that, and she must have meant this. And so we made an agreement, we will not discuss deep topics over text. And sometimes we violated that.
Right.
So Jamie would be upset about something. It's like, what are you upset about? And why did you bring that up on a text? We agreed we weren't going to bring those kind of things up during text. So we had to go back, and then during a phone call, when we're going to have some better dialogue, then we can get some clarification. But when we made that commitment, and it was hard to do, not to go to certain topics or certain depths over text, and it still happened. We had to remind ourselves, no, remember, we got ourselves in trouble.
We would start with something, and it would gradually get to that point where this is getting too heavy, too deep, we need to stop, and it was difficult sometimes to stop, or somebody would be triggered before we stopped.
Yeah. So then we'd have to do some mending offenses and getting a lot of clarification via phone calls and things like that and video chats. So anyways, that comes into play. So keep that in mind as you're having communications, that you're choosing the proper medium for the level of communication that's going on. Sending a screenshot of when my next flight is okay, but going into some real deep stuff may not be okay via text. So, some things you're going to have to discuss and come to agreement on is frequency, medium, like I said. Another thing that comes into play sometimes is attachment level. During the long distance relationship, the woman or the man may become more attached. There may not be a balance. And for me, it took me longer in the relationship to really become attached and to really feel like, yeah, Jamie's the one. And so we have to be careful about, not careful, we have to understand, and Jamie knew that I wasn't there yet. She knew it, and we discussed that, and that's a great potential for hurt feelings, and I'm sure Jamie didn't feel entirely ecstatic.
No, I remember telling you all the time, like, dude, catch up, seriously, because your words were there.
Yeah.
We knew we were going to be together.
Yes.
We talked about marriage, and even in the midst of all of that, your heart wasn't there.
Yeah.
And that was really difficult for me. It really was.
So keep that in mind. That will happen. I promise you that there will be a difference. And sometimes men attach quicker than women, and sometimes women attach quicker than men. And here's the other thing is, if you've attached to the other person more, don't pressure them into, well, when are we going to get married? It's like, wait a minute, I'm still like, oh, what's going on? I'm not fully understanding and I'm not fully ready, yada, yada. So all this stuff comes into play. So it's not your job to push. It's your job to just keep communicating and understand those things happen at different speeds.
Right.
Any other communication issues before we get on to the next topic?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Communication's a big deal, And I mean, you got to talk about how you're going to talk.
Yes.
I mean, that's how big of a deal it is.
Yes. It's so true. So that has to be dynamic, and you have to be flexible, because it
has the potential of breaking you up.
Yes.
Yeah.
So then the next topic is safety, and this is a big topic. I've alluded to the fact that the man should, not alluded, I was very clear, the man should build some bridges first. But there are, and we know stories where things weren't done well, and Jamie knows them better than I, so I think you need to go into that.
Well, yeah. I mean, we have always encouraged both men and women, but mostly women, to be very careful when they're engaging and communicating with men, especially if they have children, young children. Mm-hmm. And this isn't to point fingers at men. This is just because of this is safety. I mean, you have to be wise in your choices. And when you don't know these men, you have to be very careful in how you move forward in a relationship or just getting to know them. And so we've encouraged members of the group to do background checks, to look on the National Sex Registry, see if they're on there. There's a lot of court records and public records that you can look into without paying. And be safe.
I just found out today, as we were getting ready to do this, that Jamie had done that. Like, it didn't even cross my mind. So I just found out she looked into all these different things.
I did. Because I was looking at other people, and I was like, what the heck? I might as well see if Daniel's there. I never, ever for one second thought that he was. But I figured it's my
It is,
responsibility
it is her responsibility.
to do that. So I looked him up on the National Sex Registry. I looked him up in the courts. I looked him up in any public record that I could find. And
She
I
found my speeding tickets.
Yes, I found a speeding ticket, and I looked up the dates of his divorce and when he bought his house and all of that. I looked it all up because I have a right and a responsibility. If I'm
Yes.
going to be walking in a relationship with him, then that's my
Yes.
right and my responsibility. So but you have to be safe. And when you're talking about men coming and seeing you, Daniel came and we went out. I mean, we'd known each other for a year before that, but we still went to a public place when we met for our first date.
That's a whole different story, but
Yeah, no. He came to the house where all of my children were,
Yes.
and there was another man there, so there was safety there, and that's where he spent most of the time with my
Yeah.
family. We went to my son's house, and he got to know his family there in their home as well. So there's a lot of safety issues and concerns that you just have to be very careful what you're doing.
And Jamie's youngest son lives with us. And I'm going to be adopting him next year. And you know what? For her to check the registries and do that background check, you know what? It is not a matter of faith. It is not a matter of kindness. It is a matter of, darn it, you need to protect yourself and your children.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't do that, you're not being wise. I'm just telling you, you're not being wise.
You know what? I'm just gonna throw this out here. Okay, I know of a lady and a man. They both met in the groups and they got married. And this man molested this woman's children.
Mm-hmm.
And she found out, and he was arrested, and he's going before the grand jury.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this is serious stuff. It's real stuff, and it's our job as a parent, man or woman, both, to check out this other person that you're
Yes.
going to be spending
Yes.
time with, that you might enter into a relationship with, a covenant with, and this person is going to have access to your children, and you have to know who they are. And I will say this as well: this man was not on the sex registry. This woman could have checked him out every way and would have never found him having any prior offense. So keep that in mind.
And we know other situations
Mm-hmm.
where a man pressured a woman into having sex at his place, visiting him, and that's just not right.
Yeah.
So protection, you may say, hey, I'll come visit you, but I have to bring my girlfriend too. You find out how to be safe, but be safe, because this is important. And it's just, there are bad people out there. There are a lot of bad people even in this walk, because they're here for ulterior motives. Torah observance brings in quite the mix. And some of these people, we talked about in our previous video about Torah terrorists, there are people in this walk who are in this walk because they like control.
Right.
Torah is control. Woman, obey my every word. You are to submit. I am your master. All these things. And so don't get starry-eyed. Keep your head out of the clouds and be very rational and do your checks.
Walk in surrender.
And be safe.
Yeah, and walk in surrender and trust Abba, not the person. You've got to get to know them. And I just lost my train of thought.
But don't be naive. Don't be naive. So in all of this, it's like you're visiting each other's worlds. And again, when I visited Jamie's world, she was protected. And I was building bridges. And I was tearing down old walls.
Mm-hmm.
And when I left, you know what? Her kids liked me.
They loved him. And
they saw that, wow, he's a real guy. He's not a mess. And so that was important. The first step, it was my responsibility to go into her world and to calm and bring peace and show myself and be vulnerable and real, and
it set a foundation for moving forward. Yeah. And I remembered what I was going to say. I was going to say that we've had a lot of marriages in these groups. But there's been a lot of divorces as well. A lot of divorces, a lot of trauma, a lot of abuse, because I'm just going to put this out there, because people rush in their relationships and they go too quickly and they don't get to know the other person. So set these boundaries up. Put a boundary around your heart. Protect your heart.
Yes.
Make sure your heart doesn't get involved.
And your mind.
Yeah, make sure your heart doesn't get involved though before you're ready, because if you do, you're going to be blinded to red flags.
Yes.
And you won't be able to see clearly. If Daniel said, like, you've got your head in the clouds, you're not going to be able to see what's really going on.
Yeah.
Or you're going to dismiss it because you think of all these other great things, and then you won't really take it into account.
We know of at least one situation where the woman said, well, he wanted this to be a quick courtship. And it was. And they ended up in severe issues. And
Yeah.
so there's no rushing. There is no rushing. And rushing is wrong. I'm going to tell you that right now. You can prove me wrong if you want, but rushing a long distance relationship is not wise. There may be exceptions, and you may use that as your justification, but know the person, know their world, see what they're like, watch how they are with their kids, and take things carefully. Because if this is the Father's will, it will happen. But let it happen in wisdom and in due time, not because one person in the relationship is antsy and he just puts everyone at risk. So please take your time, learn each other, and take the necessary steps to be safe. Anything else?
And there's just a lot of ins and outs to the long distance relationship. There's a lot of things to consider, and it's not easy. And I know some people have opted out and just want to date people locally, and that's fine too. But it's worth it.
Yes.
Obviously, but you have to be willing to put the work in.
Yes. And your options are less locally. And doesn't mean the father can't find you someone. And a lot of times kids make a difference. You can't move because of the kids and dual parenting and stuff like that. But yeah, invest in it, trust, commit to make a commitment before you commit to work through problems. Because you know what? Even as you go through the situation and the difficulties, you're learning. And this person you're having a long distance relationship with may not be the person, but you've learned how to navigate. And so take that opportunity, grow in it, and please take time and be safe. All right? We love you. I've said that many times, and we're so happy to be here for you. And just shalom.